Why are standards of living and life expectancies today in sub-Saharan Africa similar to those over 200 years ago in Western Europe? Why is North Korea dark at night, while South Korea is visible from satellite? More generally, why are standards of living high in some countries and low in others? Many people think that countries have high standards of living when they have lots of natural resources, especially if they have lots of oil. However, the data shows that the link between abundant resources and standards of living is imperfect. In 2016, Luxembourg, a country with no natural resources other than iron ore and arable land, had the fourth highest standard of living of any country in the world. The only OPEC country with a higher standard of living was Qatar. The other two countries were Liechtenstein and Monaco. Nigeria has vast resources including oil, tin, iron ore, coal, limestone, lead, zinc, and natural gas. Yet its standard of living is below Japan's, even though Japan's only natural resource is access to fish. Venezuela has more oil reserves than any country on earth, yet its people have trouble obtaining toilet paper, prescription drugs, and food. North Korea and South Korea shared a similar history until 1945, and North Korea has more abundant natural resources, but South Korea's standard of living is over 20 times higher than North Korea's. What else, besides the availability of natural resources, accounts for the differences in standards of living? Economics suggests two other related answers: how heavily a country relies on markets instead of government command and control, and how well the country maintains property rights. Economics suggests that standards of living tend to be higher as the country relies more heavily on markets and maintains clearly defined property rights. The logic is simple. Countries are rich when their resources are productive. People who know that they can keep or sell what they produce have a good incentive to work hard to produce much. And people who reap the gains from increases in the productivity of the resources have a good incentive to invest in the resources to make them more productive. Ronald Reagan said, "It is a fact of human nature. When a person owns assets, a house, land, a small business, or shares of stock in a large one, he or she will look after those assets." Think about your own situation. When you work harder, when your grade depends only on your work, or when your grade depends on your work and the work of others in a team? When is a farmer more likely to invest to make the land more productive? When she owns the land and is able to keep any profit earned from the crops grown there? Or when the land is owned in common and everyone shares any profits equally? Or finally, when she owns the land but a corrupt government official can claim her profit as his? The experience of the colonists in Jamestown illustrates the importance of property rights. When the colonists first came to Jamestown, they lived communally. The colony owned the land, and everyone shared equally in the crops they grew. However, their standards of living were low. The colonists did not grow enough food to sustain themselves. After John Smith noticed that people neglected to spend much time farming, he imposed strict discipline on the colonists. Work or starve was his motto, and each colonist was required to spend 4 hours per day farming. However, after Smith was burned by an explosion and returned to England in 1609, about 3/4 of the colonists died in the winter of 1609 through 10. They died of starvation or starvation-related diseases. George Percy, the president of the colony, called it the starving time. He wrote that the colonists felt the sharp prick of hunger, which no man truly describes, but he has tasted the bitterness thereof. the colonists in Jamestown were desperate. They ate dogs and cats, then rats and mice. They apparently ate their deceased neighbors, and some said that one man murdered and ate his pregnant wife. Conditions improved substantially only after 1615. This date marked two significant changes. One change was the introduction of tobacco as a cash crop. The other change was the decision by Thomas Dale, the new governor, to institute private property. He allotted every man 3 acres of land and freed them to work for themselves. Each man could grow what he wanted on the land, work as little or as much as he wanted on the land, and keep or sell whatever he grew. However, he had no claim to what other men grew on their land. John Rolfe wrote that, after the change, people engaged in, quote, gathering and reaping the fruits of their labors with much joy and comfort, end quote. The experience in Plymouth Rock was similar. The Puritans, like the colonists at Jamestown, first lived communally and had difficulty feeding themselves. William Bradford, the governor, wrote that the communal system was, quote, found to breed much confusion and discontent and retard much employment. For the young men that were most able and fit for labor and service did repine that they should spend their time and strength to work for other men's wives and children without any recompense. Bradford then assigned each family its own parcel of land and wrote, quote, this had very good success, for it made all hands very industrious, so that much more corn was planted than otherwise would have been.